Good evening. First, our immense gratitude to the government and civil society of Canada for hosting the 6th Global Summit of the Open Government Partnership. Please join me in giving them a huge round of applause. This summit comes at a vital time. On one side, we have resurgent forces attacking democratic institutions. At a time when traditional champions of democracy have retreated or regressed, we are witnessing an unprecedented rise in emboldened authoritarian leaders in Hungary, Tanzania, Turkey, Russia, and beyond, including in OGP countries. Elected leaders eroding checks and balances to consolidate power, attacking journalists, civil society, civic space. We are witnessing ominous forces fueled by dark money using digital tools to spread disinformation and undermine democracy. On the other side, we have reformers in government and civil society activists in OGP and beyond, working to reinvigorate democracy, opening government to citizens when they are closing elsewhere. But our reality is that our emerging movement is yet only a shadow of its promise and potential. So as a partnership, we are at a critical fork in the road. Do we collectively rise up to the challenge, or do we fade into irrelevance? Our collective endeavor, our fight is for citizens at a time when citizen trust in democratic institutions has plummeted, when an astonishing 64% of citizens living in democracies believe that their elected governments rarely or never act in the public interest. Just think about that. We must look beyond the ballot box to deliver on the promise of the ballot box. The good news is that that's exactly what amazing reformers in OGP are doing, delivering real impact for people by empowering them to shape and oversee government every day, not just once in a few years when we cast our precious vote. Our collective task is to scale up these practices so they become the new global norms, and that's our collective task. In Madrid, Spain, the Decide Madrid platform empowers citizens to petition government and allocate 100 million euros on projects that respond to their needs. You know, with 400,000 registered users, Decide Madrid has grown almost as fast as Facebook today. In Kaduna, Nigeria, confronted with ghost clinics that existed only on paper, citizens upload feedback on projects that government then responds to, leading to a record completion of health clinic and a 20% reduction in maternal mortality. So for our first collective priority, I call on all OGP national and local governments to similarly empower citizens to shape and oversee services that impact their lives. For our second collective task, let us include those who have been historically excluded from policy and power, such as Costa Rica using OGP to empower the indigenous community, Colombia engaging with youth on education, Germany incentivizing the integration of migrants and refugees. I call on you to join OGP's new campaign to break the traditional roles by scaling up open government reforms that empower women politically, as in Sri Lanka, increasing the representation of women in local government, socially, as in Buenos Aires, empowering young women with information on sexual and reproductive health services, economically, as in Jalisco, Mexico, addressing the gender wage gap. Our third collective priority and task is to empower citizens to fight grand corruption. The Panama Papers unmasked rampant stolen assets stashed in anonymous companies. I call on OGP countries to disclose who owns the companies, joining OGP countries like the UK, Armenia, and Kenya who are doing this. And even as public contracts continue to be shrouded in secrecy and handed out in corrupt backroom deals, 46 OGP governments have committed to open contracting. I call on all stakeholders to push for credible implementation so open contracts become the norm. Our fourth collective task is to tackle new digital threats to democracy, as we heard just now from the Prime Minister. Even as technology is offering unprecedented opportunities to open government for direct citizen engagement, we must now also confront the insidious spread of disinformation online and threats to our individual privacy. Technology companies must become accountable to citizens for the misuse of our data, for actors manipulating, co-opting, and hijacking our spaces. I call on OGP countries to start setting new norms that empower citizens. For instance, several EU countries regulating online political ads that fuel disinformation. Finland launching a digital literacy campaign to empower students to spot and challenge disinformation. Australia protecting citizens' rights on how information about us is collected and used. France, Canada, and the Netherlands improving the transparency of public algorithms that impact all our lives. Our fifth priority and our central responsibility as a partnership is to protect and enhance citizens' basic ability to freely speak, associate, assemble, and the ability of journalists and activists to serve as vital intermediaries and watchdogs for citizens. Without this, OGP doesn't work. Unfortunately, we are seeing attacks on civil liberties in OGP as in non-OGP countries. I call on OGP members to role model opening up of civic space rather than closing it. For instance, Northern Ireland's Parades Commission, bringing in citizen commissioners to protect freedom of assembly and public safety, or Serbia's commission into the murder of journalists, bringing 3 cases to justice, inspiring Montenegro to take similar actions. Our final collective task is to forge stronger coalitions to advance our hugely ambitious agenda against very powerful political headwinds at the global level. At a time when traditional champions of democracy have retreated, we need new leaders such as Argentina, Canada, Germany, France, Indonesia, South Korea, and all others on our steering committee to forge stronger coalitions to collectively push back at a time when emboldened strongmen like Hungary's Viktor Orban proudly proclaim the end of liberal democracy. We need more heads of states, ministers, mayors to speak out in democracy's defense and challenge head-on the claims of strongmen that dictatorship is expedient in delivering results for citizens. At the country level, we need more inclusive co-creation and broaden the coalitions with cabinet ministers, parliaments, judiciaries, private sector, women's groups, LGBTQ activists, unions. Above all, we need citizens from all walks of life to join our movement. In closing, with 79 countries and a growing number of local governments, together representing more than 2 billion people today, along with thousands of civil society organizations and a host of bilateral and multilateral partners, we have the platform, the opportunity, and the imperative. Now we need the collective energy of all those in this room and beyond to spread open government norms that empower ordinary people, including those who have been historically excluded, to shape and oversee policies and services that impact their lives, to fight grand corruption, to protect themselves against new digital threats, to freely speak, associate, assemble, to ensure government serves them rather than itself. If we were to do this, if we were to rise up and join up and multiply our collective strength at this vital time, we can transform our young and nascent partnership into a countervailing force against authoritarianism and a vibrant global force for reinvigorating democracy between and beyond elections. Thank you.
Please welcome the President of Open Society